The original story of one of the most important gods in the Egyptian pantheon involves his private bits being eaten by a fish. And no, I'm not kidding. And somehow that's not even the wildest part of this myth. Hi guys, my name is Jason Hamilton. I'm a fantasy author. I'm always looking for incredible stories to tell, and frankly, it doesn't get much more incredible or frankly bizarre than the myth of Osiris. Today we're going to break down the entire epic from his idyllic rule over Egypt to his brutal murder and the magical quest of his wife Isis, who undertook that quest to bring him back mostly intact. Before he became the Lord of the Dead, Osiris was the king of the living. He was the firstborn son of Geb, the earth god, and not the sky goddess. From birth, he was destined for greatness, and the myths say he and his sister Isis were so in love they were together even in their mother's womb. When Osiris inherited the throne of Egypt, he ushered in a golden age. He taught humanity how to cultivate the land, gave them laws to live by, and brought civilization to the world. With his beloved Isis by his side, his reign was one of peace and prosperity. But he wasn't an only child. His siblings would shape his destiny. There was Nephthys, who would eventually side with Isis, and then there was Set, the god of chaos, storms, and the harsh desert. Where Osiris built order, Set reveled in destruction. He watched his older brother's success not with pride, but with a burning jealousy that would soon tear their family and the entire kingdom apart. Set's envy festered. He coveted his brother's throne and his wife Isis. Some stories say his rage was fueled when Osiris, mistaking her for Isis in the dark, slept with Set's own wife, Nephthys. But whatever his final trigger was, Set decided his brother had to go. He wasn't just going to challenge him, he was going to erase him. He hatched a plan that was both devious and theatrical. First, he secretly obtained the exact measurements of Osiris's body. Then he commissioned a magnificent chest made of the finest woods and inlaid with gold and silver, built precisely to his brother's size. With the trap set, he threw a massive banquet and invited Osiris as the guest of honor. During the party, Set had the beautiful coffin brought into the hall and made a grand announcement. He would give this priceless treasure to any guest who could fit inside it perfectly. One by one, Set's co-conspirators and the other guests tried, but none of them fit. Finally, it was Osiris's turn. Amused by the game, he lay down inside the chest, and it was a perfect fit. In that instant, Set and his 72 accomplices slammed the lid shut, hammered it down, and sealed every crack with molten lead. The rightful king of Egypt was trapped inside, and his own brother then dragged the coffin to the Nile and cast it into the river. As the waters carried Osiris away, Set seized the throne. When news reached Isis, her grief was absolute. She tore her clothes, cut her hair, and began to wander the land, desperate for any news of her husband. Her search eventually led her outside of Egypt, to the Phoenician coast in the city of Byblos. The chest, it turns out, had washed ashore and a beautiful tamarisk tree had miraculously grown around it, encasing the coffin completely within its trunk. The local king, amazed by the magnificent tree, had it cut down and made into a central pillar for his palace, with no idea the body of a god was inside. Isis, using her wisdom and magic, eventually made her way into the royal court of Byblos. She befriended the queen and, after healing the queen's son, revealed her divine identity and the tragic reason for her journey. Moved by her story, the king granted her the pillar. Isis carefully cut the coffin out of the wood, and finally, after a long and agonizing search, she had her husband back. But this was only a temporary victory, a brief moment of hope before the story takes an even darker turn. And by the way, I do keep these videos free of mid-roll ads and sponsors because I really want you to just enjoy the story. The channel is entirely self-funded, but I do have one thing that you might like, and that's my fantasy all-access library. Inside you'll find all of the mythology-inspired fantasy novels my team and I have written, all set in a massive shared universe where all the world's mythologies are real. It's how I'm able to make these videos, so if you're interested, the link is down below. Isis brought Osiris's body back to Egypt and hid it in the marshlands of the Nile Delta, where she prepared the magical rites to resurrect him. But chaos has a way of finding things, and one night while out hunting, Set stumbled upon the hidden coffin. Seeing that his plan had been thwarted, he flew into a rage. He wasn't going to make the same mistake twice, so he ripped the body of his brother from the coffin and, in a final act of desecration, tore it into 14 pieces. To ensure Isis could never make him whole again, he scattered the pieces all across the land of Egypt. Isis was crushed, but not broken. With the help of her sister Nephthys, she began a second and even more gruesome quest to find every last piece of her husband. They searched high and low from the northern delta to the southern cataracts. They found a leg here, an arm there, slowly collecting the fragments of the murdered king. But they soon realized one piece was missing, the most important piece for ensuring a legacy. She had thrown Osiris's, shall we say, manhood into the Nile, where it was immediately eaten by a fish. Now, even this didn't stop Isis. She was a goddess of magic, one of the most powerful in the entire pantheon. Since she couldn't find the original, she simply made a new one, fashioning a replacement phallus out of gold and magic. With the help of Anubis, the jackal-headed god of embalming, and Thoth, the god of wisdom, she stitched Osiris's body back together and carefully wrapped it in linen bandages, performing the sacred rites that would create the world's first mummy, essentially. Then Isis transformed into a kite, a kind of bird, and flapped her wings over Osiris's body, breathing air and life back into him. In that brief moment between death and the afterlife, she magically conceived a son, Horus. But Osiris's resurrection wasn't complete. He had been to the land of the dead, and he could not remain among the living. His destiny had changed. He descended into the underworld, the Duat, not as a resident, but as its new king. And their son Horus would be the one to one day challenge Set and reclaim the throne of the living. As the new ruler of the Duat, the Egyptian underworld, Osiris wasn't some dark villainous figure like Hades is often portrayed. He was just a just and righteous king. The underworld he ruled wasn't a place of eternal punishment, but a complex, dangerous realm of transformation that every soul had to navigate to reach paradise. The journey was filled with gates guarded by terrifying demons, fiery lakes, and divine challenges. To pass, the deceased needed a guide. That guide was the Book of the Dead, a collection of spells and passwords buried with the person to help them along their way. If they succeeded, they would arrive at the Hall of Two Truths, where their final judgment would take place. It was here that they would come face to face with Osiris himself, seated on his throne, ready to decide their fate for all eternity. But he wouldn't be the one to test them. The ultimate test was the weighing of the heart. The ancient Egyptian believed that the heart, not the brain, was the seat of a person's thoughts, memories, and character. It was the record of your entire life. In the Hall of Truth, the god Anubis would take the deceased's heart and place it on one side of a great golden scale. On the other side, he would place a single white feather, the feather of Ma'at, the goddess of truth and cosmic order. 42 divine judges would look on as the scale decided the soul's worth. If the heart was heavy with sins, lies, and evil deeds, it would outweigh the feather. For that person, the journey was over. Their heart would be tossed to the floor and devoured by a monstrous crocodile-headed beast named Amet, the devourer of souls. This was actually something far worse than hell or damnation. It was complete and total annihilation. The soul would cease to exist. But if the person had lived a good and just life, their heart would be as light as a feather. The scales would balance. Thoth, the scribe of the gods, would record the verdict, and Osiris would welcome the soul into the field of reeds, a perfect eternal paradise where they would live forever. This is why Osiris was so revered. He wasn't a god to be feared. He was the source of all hope, the promise that a life well lived would be rewarded with eternity. The myth of Osiris became the very foundation of Egyptian kingship. For over 3,000 years, it provided a divine blueprint for royal succession. When a pharaoh died, he didn't just die, he became Osiris. He transitioned from the ruler of the living to the ruler of the dead. His son, the new pharaoh, would then become the living embodiment of Horus, his father's avenger who defeated the chaos of Set and restored order to the land. This divine cycle reinforced the idea of a stable, divinely ordered monarchy passed from father to son. It was a powerful tool of state propaganda, turning a political transfer of power into a cosmic event. This was publicly celebrated in rituals like the raising of the dead, where a massive pillar representing Osiris's backbone was ceremonially raised upright. This act symbolizes Osiris's resurrection, the triumph of stability over chaos, and the renewal of the pharaoh's power, ensuring the prosperity of Egypt for another year. The story of Osiris is just one of the incredible sagas we explore on this channel, and if you want to go even deeper into worlds inspired by mythology, I'd love for you to check out my community. It's called the Fantasy All Access Library. It's hosted on a platform called School, and it's where I've put everything I do. When you join, you get access to our entire library of ebooks and audiobooks with at least one new book coming out every month. And plus, you can join me for weekly live calls where we talk about myths, fantasy, and general nerd stuff. It's an incredible community of people who love this stuff just as much as we do, and if that sounds like your kind of thing, the link is right below. Thank you for joining me on this journey into this myth, and I will see you in the next video.